Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Friday, September 18th. We are once again starting on the later side of the stream inconsistency schedule. Let's see, there's probably nothing that needs to be really covered as far as the accountability section. I failed as I was busy with other things to log in, so I missed, I think, a login reward. Although it does seem like these daily bonuses just kind of go in circles, so you're just shortchanging yourself one day, which, depending on how many days in a year you shortchange yourself, that puts you further and further back from getting certain tickets. Apparently we have another arena mission. You're also shortchanging yourself if you don't log in. The ability to re-roll, which clearly needs to happen, or the ability to do all the daily quests if you really have a ton of time, which is a big if, and get temporary gems, which we still haven't really done anything with the temporary gems at all. You're also shortchanging yourself time to move up in the ranked level as far as each season. So Gems of Fortune Cup Volume 3 is underway. I believe this cup is different and it gives you kind of random cards, although not all random cards is what I think I saw. There is a bundle here, one legendary guaranteed card pack bundle if you buy 10 Fortune's Hands, and I guess new story and new leaders will always be an advertisement. The art will just change whenever they put in a new storyline. And I haven't also gone around to I haven't actually gotten around to finishing the single player stuff. I've been busy trying to build my new computer and trying to upload things, but uploads are going slowly and my macro isn't really working. There is something that screams out for a better system where I've got it where it just prompts me. It asks a bunch of questions up front in theory to then upload 15 videos, and that's a slow process that then has this huge speed bump of waiting for the video to upload, whereas perhaps it would be better to not prompt up front, but probably not. I don't know of a real system or solution there. It's something that would require a level of ingenuity. So this would require 1,000 premium currency. And we now have like 3 different Fortune's Hand possible things to purchase. So they really push the newest expansion fairly heavily. To the point where it might be kind of ridiculous and silly. Yeah, seeing how this plays, and then you know that they added on cards that put you in this position where when the next expansion purchases it, at most you would want to open 200 packs, because then when the expansion happens, at most then you would want to open another 200 packs. And you'd be getting free tickets this whole time, so spending like all that in rupees is kind of ridiculous. And then this third expansion of a sale, effectively, one legendary guaranteed, which changes the rates, is probably not as good for a free-to-play player compared to tradables. Alright, stage 1, free entry, and I'd only ever do the free entry. And all I can do is select between these custom type of decks, which I don't think we get a choice on. So I'm gonna go with like Bloodcraft. No, well, I'm gonna go with Portal Craft and hope that this works. I don't know what's in these cards, and I don't think we know what's in the cards, and I don't think it matters. Because I don't think... Yeah, there's 20 gleaming gems. Manage a card in your hand to randomly put 2 different cards from your leader's class into your hands. And then there's Radiant Crystals. Randomly put 2 gold or legendary cards from your leader's class into your hands. So this is a straight up random deck. Which is something different, certainly. So I'll be interested in seeing that. Level by Level Gaming's on the chat. He says, hello, Rydo. I also went and changed a lot of the settings on my Nightbot, so hopefully it doesn't spam too much, but actually I kind of want it to spam. I imagine more people will get notifications for today's stream than normal, because the last stream actually did have like 6 minutes average watch time between 2 or 3 people, which is way higher than the 15 seconds that I was getting certainly before. Odds are to just do this and try and get as many Radiant Crystals in your hand as first to start with, so at least you know what you're working for. So yeah, I didn't play any games. I tried to upload, and I'm building my computer. My computer, I have it in a area. Oops. I didn't realize I was going to mess this up. So now I either would have to banish one of these cards, or yeah, this I would have to either banish one of these cards or banish this. So I need more of the other cards. Whatever, we'll just leave it there. Yeah, the room I'm building my computer in has a ceiling fan that has a light socket that's shorted, and in the process I forgot about that, and the light bulb was working for a while. The LED light in it is a very bright LED because it's a big room and I need lots of light, and then all of a sudden I smell melting plastic, and haven't even plugged in the computer yet, so it does make a decent argument to not plug anything into the outlets in that room, although so many other things are plugged into the outlets of that room anyways that that I don't think there actually is a big fear that should be around that. And I only plan on having the computer plugged in that room for a brief moment to just install Windows and before I do the major shift over. It is a weirder experience now because of the fact that that I need to, at some point, very quickly here, get all of the videos uploaded off of my current computer, whether I use the macro or not. I need to get them on YouTube so that there are no more videos that are the major focus and the most important thing. Even if I don't schedule the videos at all and just upload them to YouTube, I need to get them uploaded, and that will be something to focus on, definitely. And then I need to turn off my current computer, take out the video card, take out its current spinning backup hard drive, and then put in the 6 new hard drives that I bought into the old computer, because that's going to be a RAID server, and take the current hard drive from the old computer and put it in the new computer, and the current video card from the old computer and put it in the new computer. Let's see. So there's a lot of moving around that needs to happen, certainly. And it's kind of silly to install Windows without the video card and the hard drive installed, because Windows might just install slightly differently. You never know. I think Windows 10 is probably fine for hardware changes, although the activation might be an issue. Certainly, if you put in a new video card and a new hard drive, that might change their machine ID profiling enough to invalidate the activation and require a reactivation. So that is a small concern. And see, on my old computer, I'll leave the M2 SSD for the moment until I can, well, now it really doesn't even make sense to do that. I need to upload the videos and then completely clone the hard drive over to the old SSD, because I want to put my current M2 SSD in the new computer too, and just have the old computer running off of the old SSD. And that's, I guess that's easy enough to accomplish once the videos are taken off of it, because the only thing on that right now is just videos. Hmm.
Humility quells pride. Sleep, mortals shall learn to be. The answer lies within.
Just keep playing here.
Going supersonic.
So yeah, there's just a lot of work in this complicated process of moving over, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's a week's worth of work. My new computer case is great, but it is also huge and heavy. It has like a fan header, which is going to allow me to put some more fans in it. I had some fans that had these that I'd bought from my previous computer, and they just weren't the right size. So they'd just been sitting around for a couple of years, but whatever. But they had these rubber mounts instead of using screws. They came with screws also, but the rubber mounts theoretically would reduce noise and vibration. So I set about trying to put these rubber mounts through the holes, and they're like little mount posts made out of rubber, and you have to basically use needle nose tweezers to just forcefully pull them through, and it was such a nightmare. It was a terrible design. I often had to just use a Phillips head screwdriver to stab the edges of the mount through into the fan. Putting the other side of the mounts into the computer was fairly easy, but getting them through the fan holes themselves was a nightmare, and that took 2 or 3 hours, which is really ridiculous. We're on a good spot here. If I could get 5 wins in a tournament, that would be really excellent. But I don't want to count my chickens before they are hatched. Particularly since I imagine they match you up with more difficult challengers, although pure randomness is pure randomness as it is. So I'm gonna re-roll just one this time. That way we know we have at least one that we're willing to toss. And since we're there, we might as well just toss in a couple more. But yeah, the new case has a whole bunch of stuff changed compared to my old case. My old case is at least 8 years old, and actually I think it's probably 15 years old or more. Like, I think I pretty much built my first computer with this case, and I have since bought a home theater PC case, which was a little too custom and a little too cramped, and of course my server case, which is a server case, and it doesn't make sense to use that as a gaming one. So yeah, I just managed in my last computer build to just end up going back and using the old case. And there was nothing really wrong with the old case at the time. That was the standard, but a lot has changed. Like, the power supplies now are put at the bottom of cases. There's a lot more thought for airflow if you get a good case. There's a lot more thought for dust. There's dust filters both on the bottom and front of my new case. There's a swinging door. I got a very big one, a very big case that they can hold a lot of hard drives, so if at some point in the future this new case needs to be a server, or I just decide that there is some way to have a ZFS RAID array in Windows that is reasonable to accomplish that way. See, this would be Rush. So let's do that.
I've no regrets.
Yeah, there definitely is enough room for that, and if at some point there's some new kind of Blu-ray drive that needs to be implemented, there's 5 1/4 slots for 2 Blu-ray drive type devices, and I wouldn't be surprised if I put like some hot swap hard drive bays, or even if there was some kind of like connector panel that needed to be used. For the number of fans I have, I'm going to have 2 on the front. Those were the 2 fans that came with the case, and then I'm going to add 1 to the bottom in the middle, plus the fan that will come on and cool the CPU. Not the CPU, the power supply. So the power supply is pointing to the bottom, and it comes on and sucks air through the filter and blows it out the back of the power supply to cool just basically those components and only those components. Let's see, let's do that. And then let's get rid of the puppet. That might work fairly well. And then I'm gonna have 1 on the side panel, and the thing about the side panel is it's supposed to bring in cool fresh air, but there's no air filter on that, so I'm gonna just eventually buy some magnetic air filters, and I'll put 1 on the back panel that is actually blowing out hot air, but just in case there's ever somehow not enough pressure inside the computer. Like, the general thought would be that there's so many fans, 3, 4, yeah, there's like 4 fans sucking in air and 1 fan blowing out air, and 1 fan on the CPU that's kind of just circulating it in general away from the CPU, and then the 2 fans on the NVIDIA RTX 2080 that would be circulating air. The 3 sucking in air, 1 blowing out air should create a high pressure situation in which dust just theoretically could never actually get inside the computer, even though there are plenty of holes in which air looks like it would be able to do that. But it is just for vanity's sake probably smart to throw on a magnetic air filter even on the one that's blowing out air. And if it is such a problem, I imagine the air itself would blow the magnetic connector off of it. Magnetics in computers also have gotten fairly ridiculous in the fact that unless you're just rubbing a fairly strong magnet right next to a old style hard disk, there's literally nothing in the computers that really are going to be affected by magnets. That doesn't mean you want to take a magnetic screwdriver and jam it in there when the thing has been charged, or the capacitors might have been charged or anything like that, but putting magnets on the sides of the cases are fairly safe, and using a magnetic screwdriver when installing it is fairly safe, whereas in the past that would have been a big no-no. There would have just been a lot of danger in that. And frankly, even if you're using a magnetic screwdriver to screw in a hard disk drive into a case, you probably haven't done anything with that hard drive yet, so you still have a high chance of it not really affecting anything. Let's see. You don't have any artifact creatures in the hand.
A balanced world of joy that won't stop.
Okay. Let's do that and do that. And
Begin.
we don't have a puppet in our hand, but
The secrets of the heart of my heart is here.
let's just get rid of that.
So sorry, it was all my fault.
Is there anything else to say so far as putting the computer together? Yeah, it's a real slow process, though. I've since having hurt my back, it's really hard to just like stay standing and bending over a table. Like in theory, if I was gonna try and create a situation where I was building computers all day, I would probably need like a hydraulic lift table that is quite a custom thing. You could spend like $400 on one, and that would just be so that the table could slowly and carefully slide down to almost being on the ground, so I could bend over it from a seated position and have like a rolling chair that could spin around a table, and then I would have like a foot pedal that would raise it back up to an actual table height. But that still wouldn't really help me as far as getting a computer built in a reasonable time, and kind of inherently this was the problem in IT. If you are doing IT that requires building computers, which the vast majority of IT people don't ever get around to doing that, as much as they may even want to do that. The vast thing there is you start getting put on this timer that says you have to build a computer in a couple hours, and at that point you're having to do an assembly line style of computer build in not a fun, relaxed, like this is the thing I would like to be doing experience. Yeah, like bosses and owners of businesses would just want you to churn out as many as fast as possible, and I imagine there's a lot of Best Buy employees that had that same experience, where it's like, yeah, I want to go to work at Best Buy so I can at least mentally have computer builds in my head, and I could make all these suggestions, and then when you really get there, if you are doing anything with computers, it's very scripted and assembly line. Like, you have 30 minutes to put in this video card, regardless of how weird the client's computer case might be. That is one big problem with my current computer case, is that it does have a weird way in which you put in video cards that is nowhere as good as the new designs. Yeah, I definitely was in the right. It was a good decision to buy a new computer case, and I'm fairly thinking that this new one probably will last me for 10 or 20 years. Like, nobody's gonna abandon the ATX form factor anytime soon, and there aren't going to be major changes. At a certain point, if they did make any major changes to the way computer cases are designed now, it would be just a lot of round car, square car design, which that concept is every couple of years they were making cars that were more roundish looking, and then they would make cars that were more boxy square cars, and then they would just swap back and forth, and it was just to make the previous generations of cars look old. And eventually I think they really just hit a point where they couldn't make square cars that were fuel efficient enough or like aerodynamic enough to continue down that idea. Now cars generally are selling themselves because they have Siri in them, or just a better sound system, or more Bluetooth connectability, or self-driving is actually the only new feature that actually has some value in my mind. So yeah, if they were to come back and say, actually we were wrong, the power supply should be at the top, I would completely disagree with that idea, because the power supplies being at the bottom puts a lot of the weight of the computer at the bottom, removing a problem of computers being slightly top heavy. Plus it putting computer CPUs back at the top would directly conflict with the idea of allowing people to start to move towards liquid cooling, which that's one of the few things that is, I think, pushing and driving differences in computer case design.
Let us end this
Let's
war.
see.
Going supersonic.
Just keep on doing that, I guess. But yeah, I'm fairly happy with the case. A lot of the stuff in the computer, though, of course, I can't really mention until I turn it on and plug it in. I can say that it's been a long time since I've put on an AMD cooler with their AMD connector, and putting on the AMD cooler with their weird connector system is as fidgety as I recall it was in the old days. And I do think I slightly may have smeared some thermal paste that was applied on the cooler. I don't think that matters, really, because at the end of the day, the thermal paste is supposed to kind of heat up and melt and turn into kind of this mortar that adheres the cooler to the CPU. So it being slightly smudged is fine, as long as it's just smudged on the top of the CPU's metal and it didn't, say, get smudged on some other component. But also it's all, I'm fairly certain, non-conductive. They're not gonna make a booby trap like that. The bigger booby trap, certainly with installing AMD CPUs, is the zero insertion connector, the ZIF connector, zero insertion force.
Call it heresy, if you must. Does this sadden you?
And the pins on the CPU of an AMD CPU is risky. Both are risky, frankly, though. Like, the Intel CPUs have the pins on the socket. The AMD CPUs have the pins on the chip. Both are incredibly risky of being bent or broken off even now. The trick there, the trick and the problem with it is really that there are just too many there are just too many pins, and they really are kind of stuck around that idea. They can't do anything to reduce the number of pins. I suppose there is
Heavens, forgive me.
some attempts you could make there, but I don't think too many.
We'll bring new order to the world.
Like, because almost every pin on a CPU is a parallel data pin, for the lack of anything more, or if it is a serial data pin, which would mean that there's multiple bits of information on a single pin, then that serial connection is probably going to some other part of the motherboard and not directly to the RAM or any of the North Bridge.
No looking back. Alas, inevitable.
I assume that the pins need to be there. But it might get down to the point where we do need maybe multiple CPUs just to reduce the risk. Like 2 CPUs, because I can't put that many more pins on a CPU. Or that a self-adjusting CPU in some way that has just touchpads, and the CPU itself can kind of move itself into place as things just get smaller and smaller. Or we're just going to hit a point where the motherboards themselves are pre-installed CPUs, and they can no longer separate those two things.
Begin. I won't let you ruin my world.
Alright, followers strike deluxe damage, X equals the number of this follower's attack. Okay. This. And then. Oops.
Shall we?
There we go, that's all we can do. But yeah, the power supply is not something you're gonna know. I was surprised to see the power supply did not have a switch for 120 240. Apparently that's now all done internally, or they just gotten rid of that switch. There is a low and high switch on the AMD's CPU cooler that it came with. I turned up the high. So I was trying to build a fairly quiet computer, but I think at the end of the day, I'm very well going to end up building a more loud computer than I think. Alright. Kill that.
It's impossible to change fate, and yet.
Do we want to evolve? Let's evolve this.
Sleep.
Creation is destruction. Shall we?
Ouch.
Do we want to toss anything? I don't think so, not yet. Is there anything else to talk about? Yeah. Yeah, with all the fans I'm adding, with turning up the CPU to high, it is going to be very much allowing the computer to go as high as it needs to, and then adjusting it to cool down a lot more. I don't know why they wouldn't have the CPU fan on the high setting no, just the default, because the CPU fan more than any other has to be plugged into the CPU fan plug, and auto adjustable by the BIOS and the motherboard, because otherwise you're just going to have that CPU fan at maximum always, and that would be really noisy. Okay. Resonance would give you +3/+3. This one won't evolve. This will give me +1/+2. There we go. I briefly thought about using the plug that's right below the CPU fan plug for power, called CPU optional. It's typically used for a water block, but I briefly thought, hey, I might have enough fans to have a fan on the top of the case and plug it into that, because that's where the outlet plug for that would be closest. But I managed to not really have that many fans, so that wasn't a problem after all. There is also, I suppose they thought there that that I might move the fan off the side of the panel and down to the bottom, so that there would be like 4 fans at the bottom, which seems ridiculous. Just so there wasn't any potential noise coming from that side. But no, I think it's better to build the computer right and deal with the noise later. I have backup plans as far as like sound muffling on the back side of the microphones if the computer gets super noisy. And I haven't ever plugged in these fans, so they might be fairly noisy fans in the first place. The ones that came with it, or the ones that I'm using. Right.
1 and a 2 and a 3.
Okay. And what do we want to do? This one, I think we probably should just swap. That way we can have couple more cards. Whatever that was crazy. See, that's where I'd like to look at the log, but so much for my hopes of getting 5 wins in a row, but we weren't doing terrible there anyways. Yeah, I feel like there probably will be a level of sadness once I'm done putting the computer together of just this is probably my own mental disability in the idea that once a project's done, you just have nothing to do. What is that? There's an old like Greek myth where Oedipus wept or something because he climbed to the top of the world, or he defeated all the gods, and then he had no one else to challenge. And so yeah, that's kind of the feeling that I think I probably will have. Meanwhile, I've also been distracted once again. I had the encryption working on my server, and then it stopped working because it was working like 99%, and then I had set up a bunch of logs, and I think the logs were sending different kind of data that was not getting filtered as well, or just formatted as well. And so with that improperly formatted emails or I was just not handling the differently formatted emails, probably not improperly. They probably are very, very much following some standards. It was just not working, and then I started trying to work on it, and as I continued to try to work on it, I continued to make it worse and worse. So I took myself very much further away from the goal instead of bringing myself closer to the goal. And that sometimes happens, where you take one step forward, you even think that you might be completely done, and then you find out that you have to take 4 steps back and start over again. But it's in a pretty bad place, and there's definitely something wrong with the way this service runs. It is causing a incredible slowdown for the CPU when it's improperly programmed, and because of that incredible slowdown, I often cannot connect to my server through SSH, which is not how you would want things to go.
All magic guns can be kind of finicky. Wisdom is eternal.
So yeah, that has become a distraction, and since the logs get sent every day at midnight, pretty much every day at midnight, I'm getting a bunch of error logs, and I'm not sure that half the error logs aren't just trying to send old copies of older emails that that too might be
You watching?
a bit of an issue. Certainly is. I might.
I usually watch from the nosebleed section.
Shop.
There we go.
All magic guns can be kind of finicky.
There we go. So yeah, I'm having a hard time working on that because of the SSH connection not working. And I don't really see a way to fix it until I can just get the dumb script to actually work. The script was such a bodge job that is the inherent danger of bodge jobs, is that you simply make one change and the whole thing falls apart. One of the things in particular is if there's just no valid data at all in the message. Somebody's trying to send a message, but there is no subject header and there's nothing in the body. At a certain point, you might say, well, just drop that message and don't send it at all, but okay. That would be bending the rules a little bit. Like, if, however, there is zero data on the message, sending a default response there and saying just it's an empty subject and it's an empty head, sending that would be the exact same encrypted message over and over again, which is one of the flaws as far as how the Enigma machine was decrypted, is in the fact that they just looked for words like, for instance, the Enigma machine, they were trying to decrypt German transmissions. They knew the word Heil and then H name there would be said probably at the end of almost all the messages. So they were able to then just like try and compare messages and ascertain some data out of it. Now, in all fairness, GPG and its encryption scheme and rotation and all that should well, this would do absolutely nothing, so I probably should toss that one. Like the new encryption methods probably have some randomization that would workaround, something like that. But I'm not 100% sure, and better safe than sorry. So what I did as a way of avoiding, let's see, what does it destruction in black do? Yeah, as a way of avoiding that, I just get the exact time and date and add it to the message. So it says empty subject, empty body, and then the date. That way, the message and the date is different always, and you just don't repeat it. Repeating the same encrypted message is not a smart move. And it's kind of the same as like repeating the same password over and over again. If you're logging into a website over and over again and someone's watching it, even if they are rotating the key that's being used so a different encrypted signal is being sent, if they know what the password is, or they can guess that much, they could still take a step closer to decrypting something. Alright, so what if I did this? And then did this?
I usually watch from the nosebleed section.
And then did this.
Who needs the world when you've got me?
And then did this.
Sleep.
So now I have like a destruction in white. 2 of them. Plus I have something that I think would destroy well, we'll play that next turn and we'll just end. Alright, well, that's way too much time spent on the accountability section, and that's definitely burying the lead. Let's start covering the video game news. There was a Sony PlayStation announcement presentation. It announced the prices and a bunch of games. I think we may have talked about them on Wednesday, but we'll talk about them again. I'm fairly certain that the Xbox Series S, which is a middle ground device, is $100 cheaper at $299 than the $399 discless PlayStation 5. If that matters. Deal 1 to an enemy follower. Restore 2 defense to your leader. Deal 3 here. I think.
Vice, virtue, pride, humility.
That. And I guess we do this. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I need to play any of them, frankly. Yeah, so let's cover the news. There's no reason to go really long today. Like I said, I need to upload a lot of videos, so streaming and just meandering. On the other hand, talking about what I'm actually passionate about in the accountability section is something I still want to focus on doing as much as is reasonable because I don't want to as much as I talking about just the next like random low effort Steam game. While I do need to be informed on that, I want to maintain and grow passion as much as possible. And this is like the one time in 4 or 5 years in which I can be really focused on building a computer. Although I more and more am just taking these side projects. Alright. Start by getting rid of this. Paradigm shift. See, I don't know if I have a high cost portal craft in my deck. So if I do this, and now 10 damage to all enemies needs to go. Ancient artifact. Bane.
Who needs the world when you've got me?
Kill. End the turn. Stores 2 defense to the leader. This needs to be played. 10 damage to all players. If he can't destroy this, which there's no way to destroy this. I've kind of won unless he can do a healing effect or a lot more damage than 7. This is at the start of the turn though, so if he could do a decent amount of damage this turn and then a decent amount of damage the next turn. Yeah. Okay, we've got to do something here that would let us solve this, and then this, and then and I don't want to play, I guess, this.
Guess it's my turn to do field work.
Yeah, I think I've lost, unfortunately. I should have probably played this a little bit faster.
Power of mortality.
Had I played this like 1 turn earlier, I think I would have won. Alright. So I'm scrolling down my Twitter feed because I talked for 40 minutes. Just to see if there's any new news. It's a shame, I was hoping for a full 5 win, but if I just get 1 more win here, if I just get lucky, at least I'll be in the top tier for the next round, which would be more of a challenge but more of a reward, and I'd rather play in a big pond as a small fish than as a big fish in a small pond, although I probably should be the big fish in a small pond. Alright, so the biggest thing I think to talk about as far as the PlayStation 5 is that they announced pre-orders at the presentation. The pre-orders immediately dried up. and now pre-orders are saying they may be delayed. So I feel like that, in combination with them, Bloomberg, claiming that they had cut their initial production run, does seem to imply that they intentionally, whether they were forced to do it or not, that they had less in stock than demand, which is a bad thing, because now is not really the time for the PlayStation 4 to say that it is so popular that it won't be available for purchase this holiday. They would have wanted it to sell out somewhere around January or February, when they could make that claim and still get a lot of sales. There is, I suspect, I would guess maybe as high as 12% higher than average attempts to buy PlayStation 5s in order to flip them and make money, as people don't have jobs and are looking for more and more scams effectively to make money on, and they are certainly.
Now, let's have a look-see.
What am I trying to say there? Yeah, there are definitely people that try to flip to PlayStation 5 are gonna be in for a big shock. But I also wouldn't be surprised if it's individual people willing to try and flip their PlayStation 5, but then won't be too upset if they just have to keep it and they bought it at retail price. The thing Sony did right is they brought the games, they showed the games. They even made an offering to try and compete with Xbox Games Pass, but they didn't really have as many games there as possible. They've also are claiming that the PlayStation 4 has like 4 to 5 more years in it, which I think is highly questionable. But they didn't bring a finance solution there, and both Xbox and PlayStation opened up the door for some very sad kids, and this is always the case when they sell the discless versions of consoles, in which parents are going to end up buying games, physical games, for consoles that literally cannot read the physical games.
Humans and puppets get along great.
Let's see. So yeah, there is definitely that danger. There always is that danger for the past couple generations. The 3DS also is finally been discontinued, which I don't think you mean. They mean the new 3DS or the 2DS XL, new 2DS XL. Like, I think those are still in production, but they won't be for much longer, I imagine, as Nintendo is moving towards a Switch only SKU. But they also are going to try and have a like Switch Pro SKU that I think they're secretly working on, and I think it's fairly obvious. But really the financing is the thing that Sony needed to push, and that is something that poorer people will be more willing to be involved with and try, whereas the, let's face it, relatively rich mainstream video game journalists will just pew the idea of any kind of financing, and they'll just say, well, if you don't have the money, don't buy the console, and yeah, that only works so well for parents who need something for their kids to do, particularly now as there's a lot more remote learning going on, and there's a lot more times in which kids' time is not getting taken up. Even if you are having your kid actually spend 8 hours a day at school, you cannot discount the fact that most kids probably were taking like a bus or a car ride for an hour a day at minimum. Like even if it was 30 minutes to get to school and 30 minutes to get back, it was at least an hour a day just to get there and back. In between each class is usually a 5 to 15 minute break. Lunch often was like a 30-minute break. Funnily, if you think about how legally, if you're employed in the United States, they're required to give you 2 15-minute breaks and a 30-minute lunch, I believe. I don't think they can give you a 15-minute lunch. Schools themselves are not legally required to give 15-minute breaks. And they probably should consider something like that. I don't know how well that would work. It probably would work pretty terribly. But if the idea is that schools are supposed to be the emulators, then that would make sense. Okay. But yeah, even if you're doing like only 4 classes a day in school, like super long classes instead of 8 classes a day, you're talking another 20 minutes there. So there's at minimum a hour and 20 minutes that every single remote learning kid is wandering around their house with nothing to do. And certainly you can squeeze in much gaming in 5 minutes, but you can certainly add that all up at the end. So yeah, and that's just assuming the kids are actually doing hour-long Zoom calls or hour-long actual school stuff. In reality, they're not. So that when that gets back to the financing idea, yeah, I imagine there are a lot of parents that would be desperate to get their kids a console, particularly a generation of parents that are desperate to get their kids a console that they never have had any consoles before. And so the PlayStation 5 at minimum being $400 is a little too high. Whereas if the PlayStation Plus membership being bundled with the digital version and it being $70 a month for 2 years, maybe that would make more sense. Although $70 a month for 2 years would be like $1,400 when it would have to be like $35 a month or something around that. I don't want to do the math, but yeah.
I'm coming for you.
The problem with these financing plans too is that they both a theoretical PlayStation financing plan and the actual Xbox financing plan is that there needs to be a fairly easy way for parents to say, no, this kid has been rotten. I'm not going to put any more money into this console. I'm sending it back without it hurting people's credits. Because that is the other end of that, is that there might be a way for you to have a specialized financing plan that let the parents just go, this kid is grounded for this month, and thus we're going to disconnect the service and not let them play the Xbox for this month, and thus we're only going to charge a smaller amount, or we'll put the monthly payments on pause for a couple months. But yeah, that's just more weird banking finance stuff that you would have to figure out how the rules of that would work. And I'm sure Microsoft wouldn't like that at all, because they're already losing money on the hardware, I'm sure. Moving on, let's start actually covering the news. New Moon Productions has a project manager in Hamburg, Germany. If you want to try and get that job. So make 2 people fight each other. This and this.
The world
Your
carries on.
souls nourish me.
And then this. And then this. Then in the turn. I think I'm gonna lose here. Open Critic has an article here. Sea of Thieves celebrates Talk Like a Pirate Day. They're still talking about Sea of Thieves. I am really surprised about that. Sea of Thieves is another one of those games that seems to be overly hyped by mainstream video game journalists and in this case Open Critic, but in many other cases other sites, when it seems like nobody in the real world is talking about it or playing it. You can see, particularly in the case of Sea of Thieves, a huge split between what like YouTubers and Twitch streamers are talking about and playing compared to an old game that nobody really is playing, at least from my perspective. I could be wrong about that. There might be a very passionate fan base for Sea of Thieves. Alright. This guy has 5 cards, so that wouldn't work. This could put a card into your deck. 2 damage to all enemy followers. Yep, that was something, but not enough. Open Critic has another article over here. After a rough launch this summer, the real-time strategy shooter hybrid Disintegration is already shutting down. I don't even remember a game called Disintegration, which goes to show how bad that launch must have been. Alright, so we got 2 wins out of 3. That's better than we usually do. And so we got an upcoming card pack ticket and 50 rupees, which does seem to indicate that we are in a position where the next expansion is coming. So yeah, saving up the gold for that. Meanwhile, our mission, we need 1 more victory, and we need a Dragoncraft or Havencraft victory and a Bloodcraft victory. So let's try a Bloodcraft victory first and see if we can get a quick victory there, and then I'll get 1 daily quest done, and then it will all be Dragoncraft and Havencraft. TechRaptor has an article here. Your PlayStation 5 Amazon pre-orders may be delayed. Yep. There is a very good argument, and it certainly is going to be subjective, about whether you think it's worth $100 in savings to lose a disk drive, considering how big the downloads will be on all of these files, and the secondary market just being completely eliminated from you if you do go with the diskless version. I think you probably are way better off in the long run getting the disc version, unless you literally only plan on playing like 5 games in the entire lifetime of the PlayStation 5. If you're just going to be playing Madden once a year, then a discless version may be a good use then, because if you're playing Madden or Call of Duty on day 1, you're not going to get any kind of discount there anyways, so your only savings may be that $100 savings. But if you're going to be a proper gamer, in my opinion, and this is a very personal opinion, as far as proper gamers being people who play more than just Madden and Call of Duty and nothing else.
You don't understand. Juicy.
Then you probably should spend $100 there. I would imagine if you didn't get often like $20 savings by buying used games that are like 6 months old on almost every game. So as long as you get 5 of those over the lifetime, $5 $20 savings over the lifetime of the PlayStation 5, which should be 4 or 5 years, then you probably are very well suited to buy the disc version.
Juicy.
There is also a lot of kind of elitism talking about the $70 price tag that they're trying to establish as the new standard for video games. And you've probably heard all the arguments before, and it seems like the mainstream video game journalists in general keep making the exact same arguments, acting as the advertising branch of video game companies. But one point that they are intentionally failing to mention here is not that because of the price of inflation, $70 games should be a thing, or not that there's a the games are actually still cheaper if you actually equate it to the value of the current dollar. All of that, granted, may be true. What is being ignored, though, is the reality of the situation. People are making not much more money than they were. They have not gotten a raise to follow the price of inflation, which completely throws out the inflation argument. Like, the inflation argument only makes sense if you had gotten raises to follow inflation also. Otherwise, there's no point of even discussing that. Furthermore, on that thought, supply and demand religious arguments, that I will call them, are also just bull. They never really matter, and they never really have any real connection to reality. But what they're not really covering here and talking about is the fact that every single other electronic thing has fallen in price. You are woefully and willfully being ignorant on the fact that a record player in the old days was probably $500 or more, and now a record player, if you could even find one for purchase, is going to be at an entry level $80, $50 maybe. Like, you could get a used record player certainly from a junk shop for probably $10. Cassette players, boomboxes, all of those electronics used to be super, super expensive, and they have fallen. And when you run the inflation argument around that, and you compare what the equivalent of modern day cost was to other things, it's all fallen down. The closest comparison you can make is the value of a CD. If you were going to say CDs used to be $20, $25 or the equivalent, let's even go insane and say that at some point CDs were $50 to get 12 songs. How much is a CD worth nowadays? I'll tell you how much it's worth. It's worth 0.0001% of of a penny for a Spotify playback. Like, CDs are almost completely valueless because of just the way all other forms of entertainment have gone. Movies, I suppose, the price of tickets keep going up and up, but even at that, buying DVDs, the price of those have gone down and down and down. So it really is an argument of where should the price of a video game be, and where should the price of a video game be is really they should be closer to $40 in my opinion. Most of the games that are selling for $60 blow their budget and overpay their CEOs. We know that. A lot of games are not even worth $40, and yet they're forced to this artificial expectation. So you do see a lot of games that should have probably been a lot cheaper sold at 60 or maybe 30, and even at 30 they're expensive. When we look at some of the games on Steam and how low the prices for a lot of those, they still are fairly expensive. Like, you'll still see $5 games that should be 69 cents on Steam. Steam is probably the most supply and demand and free marketplace there is for video games, and what you will see is that the self-listed games are at less than $5, and then the big AAA games that have publishers are at an artificial price of $60. And we are getting the truth of the matter is we need to call a spade a spade. We're going to be playing Dragoncraft and Havencraft. And now there has been absolute blatant collusion amongst mainstream publishers and big AAA game developers to raise the price of video games artificially, and they are now blatantly and openly colluding once again to raise the prices more than they should be instead of competing. And this is where competition as a kind of argument or religious belief doesn't really exist without a huge amount of oversight and a government, in this case the United States government, willing to crack down on collusion, which they have not been willing to crack down on collusion, and I'm not sure they ever were willing to crack down on collusion. So yeah, don't bring these weak ad copy advertisement arguments about why video games should be $70 when you're not coming from a either informed perspective, which most of the people aren't, and they're just spouting ridiculous things, or just being contrarians because they want to be contrarians.
I soar the skies in the name of justice.
But yeah, I don't want to hear these arguments about the $70 games because they're bull, and people know they're bull. Like, poor people know it in their heart, in their feeling, even if they can't express or explain it. They know those arguments are bull. And they're just hoping more than anything else that people don't pay attention and get worn down by hearing the same thing over and over again. And that's what we also see certainly a lot in like political messaging on 24-hour news channels, take your pick, where they just repeat the same concepts over and over again. One of the favorites there is that women make, 79 cents on the dollar. The number seems to change all the time, but that gets repeated all the time. But when you actually look at the data that they're even trying to quote, if you can even really call it data, it is a manipulated number that takes the average income of all females in the United States and the average income of all the males in the United States, instead of saying, well, are people in the same jobs, in the same positions, getting paid differently because of gender? Which, when you actually run those numbers, you find that the difference is minimal. There is a slight difference that can be easily attributed to women just not being willing to negotiate, and kind of the whole argument does boil down to the idea of, well, if these people were willing to negotiate as much as they were willing to complain about it on Twitter, they probably would have be making the same amount, because there definitely are like, what's the best way to say this, overconfident males out there that will negotiate for a price that is more than they're worth, whereas there's, I think, fairly few females like that. So you have to account for that also. Like, I've literally met and seen people that have negotiated for higher pay and then turned out to be very bad workers and not worth even the base salary, let alone the raise they got themselves. Moving on, we have an ESA blog. I feel like this is going to be the new thing for ESA and the ESRB, is that they're going to become kind of a blog site since they can't do E3. Here it's Family Game Night with the ESRB Senior Vice President Bill Garrity. And it seems like it's a little Q&A session that's not even super long. 7 questions and answers. But yeah, I think that's what they've decided that they have to be, just because, and yeah, that makes sense. One from a countdown. Honestly, that would be a smart move for the ESA to put out more articles and start actually representing themselves as something more than just the company that gives out ESRB ratings and has a big party advertisement in E3 every year. They should have been a more annualized experience at the very least.
If you would please look to your right.
You were done for.
There is a right and wrong way to pray. Observe.
What does this one do? Summons this. Does this guy have rush? Alright, fine.
It is not my place to show mercy. Any questions? Resign yourself.
What does this guy do otherwise? If you have more evolution points than the other guy, which I don't. And I wouldn't. TechRep has an article here. Microsoft will penalize retailers who break the Xbox pre-order embargo, Keeley says. Okay. Like, I don't think the pre-order embargo specifically for Xbox is likely something that needs to be broken. Although, I guess you could get into a deeper argument about, like, does that matter or not? Why can companies and businesses not just pre-order game consoles now? Why can't they take pre-orders for the PlayStation 6? There probably should be some legal limit to say you can only pre-order for 6 months to a year before something is available. But if people have passion and they want to pre-order something and they want to pre-order it at potentially a higher price, or companies want to gamble at charging a lower price for a console, there seems like there's probably too much power being given to the shipper of products in that case versus the stores.
the skies.
See between
But
my
whatever,
legs.
like, it's the way things are, and I don't believe in pre-ordering in general, so it doesn't really affect me enough to make me passionate one way or the other. I would just say, yeah, I recommend people not pre-order, because there is the possibility, and once again, this is something that people need to be reminded of, there is a possibility that the first run of the Xbox Series X or S or the PlayStation 5 with or without disc versions, there's a possibility any of those can be highly defective. Let's not forget the original Xbox 360s and the Red Ring of Death fiasco. So they could be highly defective, they could be not really what you think they're going to be. You might get reviews and change your mind. You should only really buy something when you're fully as informed as possible and ready to buy. Moving on, TechRaptor has an advertisement here for Nutaku, the adult website. They're redesigning their website. It's now in beta. I would say their website is pretty bad, so redesigning it's a smart move, going kind of from a white background to a dark background theme, which is smart for an adult website, I think. But at the end of the day, I will also say Nutaku is kind of bad about the products they sell. Particularly, like, I'm still playing College Days, but I'm just wrapping up there. There's no new content being added to it. They quickly announced that and abandoned it in less than 6 months. And I think that's what they pretty much do for all their games, is they have pretty bad games that they just buy from other people, and maybe they skin them to be adult games when they weren't even really adult games in the first place. But they've yet to have something that's good enough to really play. Whereas I'll once again mention the gacha game Destiny Child, which now, once the tap storefront version of that becomes available, will be fully uncensored in the global version without having to jump through hoops to mod it. Not that the censored version is actually that censored.
Fiction wasn't enough for you.
So yeah, I'm still having fun with Destiny Child. They've moved over to another event, and that's happening now. Let's play Dragoncraft again. I think I have a higher chance of Dragoncraft. I need to rebuild the Havencraft deck. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Mythgard, which is a free-to-play card game. And I guess I always need to have a collection of free-to-play card games. This kind of looks like it's a heavy metal inspired cyberpunk card game, like dragons attacking planes. It's already on my follow list. It's rated very positively. Requires a third-party account. I suppose it is worth mentioning that the I guess I'll just put this on the wish list now. It must have come out of early access. It is worth mentioning that the Rocket League game on Steam now requires an Epic storefront account, which that stinks, but it almost certainly is not something that Valve is going to bother to do anything about. They would look Valve would look a little bit bad if they went to attack Epic, and this is the one instance in particular where I think Valve not attacking Epic is the right move, whereas some of the other ways Valve could have attacked Epic in the past, but they chose not to. And in a weird way, that has allowed Valve to avoid legal fights with Epic, which Epic seems to want to get into legal fights with everybody, and perhaps that is because they win those legal fights more often than average.
You can do it.
I still am planning, I think it's worth mentioning, on playing the Marvel-based second dinner game. That I lost a little bit of enthusiasm, I would say. I lost a little bit of the enthusiasm there, but with the most recent Marvel game. But that's pretty much it. I'm still fairly enthusiastic about the second dinner Marvel-based card game. I think that will still be a big seller. There would have to be a pretty bad Marvel movie or two in the meantime. And so, yeah. In the current moment, as long as Shadowverse doesn't do something weird like ban me and accuse me of cheating like Magic the Gathering Arena did, I'll always have Shadowverse to fall back on. And once the Marvel card game comes out, even in early access, I'll plan on jumping over to that. Of course, there is this danger now, since Shadowverse is fairly free-to-play friendly. If I go to second dinner and find out that the game is actually very pay-to-win and not friendly to free-to-play people, I might fall back to Shadowverse because of that. Okay. Is there anything we could do here?
There's a lot more where that came from. Wanna go for a swim?
I guess we can do that. That and that. I could have done that. Darn it. Game of Sutra has an interesting article. There's a report, and I think report should be highlighted here, that Riot Games and Epic Games have come under U.S. government scrutiny over Tencent ties. How much scrutiny? Who knows? Like, TikTok is set to be banned like on Sunday, so it seems like Oracle might buy them, but we're not even sure what Oracle's really buying there. So, yeah. I can't inherently say I disagree with scrutiny, though. Like, that there is clearly a argument to be made that all of Tencent's success has been created by the Chinese government manipulating the scenario to the benefit of Tencent by making just just doing a lot of things. It would get too long to list them all, but they've been propping up Tencent. It's clearly fairly obvious, and they have indirect control over Tencent, and a little bit of U.S. protectionism against the Chinese government, I think, in this case, is due. If for no other reason than to punish China for some of the bigger, more important moral atrocities that they have done. If all we can do is attack their electronic companies and their software and service companies because of all of the terrible things that the Chinese government has done, if that's the only kind of pseudo-embargo we can inflict, then I guess we should still probably do it. Like, in a weird way, it kind of is a cancel culture argument, but yeah, in this case, I kind of agree. We should cancel a lot of China and a lot of Chinese business and stop doing business with them. And it's of course important to say that the Chinese government basically has direct control of all the businesses inside of China. Whereas if this were a German company, if Tencent was a German company, the Germany government doesn't not inherently have direct control over every single German company. They could, certainly, any country could very quickly take direct control of any company, but no other country like China has set up so many laws and so many rules and so many systems to have a single word spoken and it be followed so quickly. In the United States, for example, if the US government told some company not to do something, that company would sue and fight it for years, and they'd have a process to sue and fight it. Whereas in China, if you didn't do what they said, they'd just throw you away or disappear you. They'd throw you in jail. Moving on, though. I'm slightly debating whether it's newsworthy to talk about updates, but I guess it is. So the Dauntless Untamed Wild update reveals a brand new behemoth. So I guess if you're playing Dauntless, you'd be interested in that, but if you're not, you're not. It sadly does come down to the fact that every time the CEO of YouTube, Susan Wojcicki, tweets, it is something that you have to criticize. Yeah, she's using, I believe, the old Twitter style of putting a period here, period at U2. I don't think you have to do that anymore. She's promoting U2's album on YouTube Music, which inherently this is the problem, is YouTube Music shouldn't be a thing, because inherently then you're just, the only time you're going to promote anything on YouTube Music is the major music companies that are content IDing and ruining YouTube in general. And remember, YouTube Music used to be Google Play Music, and it was probably better to be that way. And then 4 hours ago she goes, it was a complex feat of engineering and it worked. The algorithm is less likely now to promote misinformation. Yeah, this is bull. We've seen plenty of complaints about videos that are anti-conspiracy theories getting labeled as pro-conspiracy theories. So they've just changed their algorithm once again to ruin legitimate YouTube content creators. And at the core of it, you are just running into that same argument where YouTube thinks they are the right people to be the decider of what is true and what isn't true, which I would not give that authority to YouTube at all. And it would be nice if just in between every bad tweet that opens herself up to criticism, she could just make a generic positive tweet that nobody could disagree with. On the other hand, I guess if you compared her to Randy Pitchford's Twitter, I imagine she's still probably doing way better than him.
Can't keep relying on you, Dragon.
But yeah, YouTube sucks, and it's just getting worse every day. What can you say?
Now, if you would please look to your right. Any questions?
TechRaptor has an article here. Gears Tactics debuts an Xbox version and new enemies this November. Okay, Gears Tactics I think is like a tower defense game in the Gears of War series. But yeah, as a PC gamer, it'd be fairly hard to try and play the Gears of War series. I don't think all of them have been ported over. I don't think even if they have been ported over, I don't think they're in the best of shape. Alright. If you have more cards in your hands than your opponents, which I wouldn't. So let's do that. And that.
Any questions?
We have a game on Steam here called Phasmophobia, which looks like a dark screenshot asset flip horror game. Really don't give a lot of credit to these games anymore. Has standard in VR, it's $12.59. It says it's English full audio, but it seems to say it's single player here. But then it's here says it's a 4-player online co-op game. That might explain the positive reviews, is that it is more focused around online co-op. But you're not really seeing anything here, and I feel like a horror game needs to show the spooky part. Needs to show the monster in one screenshot at least. I could sit here and watch this entire trailer, but even in the first half of it, I've seen nothing but a bunch of dark screenshots. Let's see.
You were done for. All must come to an
Okay.
end.
So yeah, I'm not going to put Phasmophobia on the wish list or the fall list. Next we have a game on Steam called Path to Prosperity. Let's see, what is it tagged as? A base building real-time strategy game? It looks like to me it's an asset flip first-person shooter or survival game. I don't know why you would want a real-time strategy or base building game to be in first-person perspective. That seems fairly crazy. It's $14.99 English only. See, and when you see a game like this that is so overly priced, this is where the free market, I think, really does decide. Is that most people, I think, are smart enough to look at the visuals on this game and go, "This is not worth $14.99." I had someone on one of those argument videos try to make the argument that games, and maybe they are right about this, need to sell like 1.4 million copies to break even. I think that number is way off, though, personally. I think it is closer to 300,000 to break even. Perhaps the most expensive games, like, and that's where he was coming from, was like a rumored maximum of how much it costs to make Fallout 4, for instance, which probably was way over budget and maybe didn't even make money. And yeah, I could understand that Fallout 4 probably did need to make $1.5 million to break even, but then you also have to calculate how much of that is because you have to add in the advertisement budget on something like that, and the advertisement budget then throws that equation very high. But yeah, I would say a game like Path to Prosperity here, probably to break even, if the single game developer asset flipper spent even 6 months on it, if they sold 100,000 copies of this, they probably would make at least $10,000 of pure profit off of it. But they won't, certainly. And that's not to say that there isn't kind of a high risk, high reward scenario with video games. There definitely is, but no. They wouldn't highlight when a game sells 100,000 copies or 300,000 copies if that wasn't a number that at least in some level was worth highlighting. Well, this is ridiculous.
Did you write it?
TechRaptor has an article here. Dirt 5 Playgrounds lets you craft your own fun. So they're putting in, I guess, a sandbox mode in Dirt 5, which might mean that a lot of Dirt 5 is inside of a stadium rally car racing, which some of the Dirt games have been like that, and that has been fairly annoying. Like, there definitely was a Dirt racing game that I played that where the vast majority of all races were in the exact same looking stadium, and where previous Dirt games were very much random locations, or at least 5 or 6 different outdoor locations where there's trees, snow, water, rain, things that made you feel like you were driving outside. And I would much prefer that. Next we have a game on Steam called Doom and Destiny Worlds, which looks like an RPG Maker game. An RPG game with a lot of survival world crafting. So I guess it is an actually RPG Maker. On second thought, it looks more like a Stardew Valley game. $15.99 and a bunch of languages. Do I want to play it though? No, I don't think so, because it kind of just feels like it is trying to be a Minecraft clone. You can see there's a ton of screens that they have for sub-menus. Yeah, here's TechRaptor's article on it if you want to read that. Oh, $70 a product of inflation or corporate greed. And seems like it's literally one paragraph. Either that or my ad blocker is so messed up here that there was a lot more. See what it looks like without the ad blocker. Nope, it literally was just one paragraph. It's just posting questions, not posting an opinion piece at all. Kind of clickbait if you've ever seen it. And yeah, you can definitely see there's a lot of ads that they just clickbaited people to. I hope TechRaptor does not get into just putting out a bunch of articles like that. They're not terribly clickbaity, but sometimes they do seem to do it. Gamasutra has an article here, a video they're promoting, preventing online harassment in games by studying social media's failures. This was September 18th, 2020. I think preventing online harassment is the wrong way to approach it. It's not something you can ever prevent. At a certain level, what people call online harassment is nebulous and ever shifting as an opinion, and a third party perspective in particular does not well suit monitoring that. In the same way that a teacher may have a different perspective or bias, and they may see harassment happening on the playgrounds in kindergarten that actually wouldn't be called harassment by any of the parties involved. There is a huge danger, certainly, around misdiagnosing a situation. And as I was thinking about that idea, you're never going to prevent online harassment. It's always going to be there. Harassment in general is always going to be there. You can create much more harm by making it illegal, because you're at a certain point going to end up just calling for censorship, and that's where most of the SJWs that run the video game industry are actually pushing for, whether they realize it or not. So what they should be doing is creating a relatively safe environment for these things to happen, for there to be ways to deal with these things, for individuals to learn how to deal with these things, and how and how resolution can be found amongst the parties that are involved. So the equivalent to the example here is, instead of having teachers on the playground at recess hovering over every student, listening to every word that's said, there needs to be a system that is established where if one kid is making fun of the other kid, then the other kid needs to be willing to shun or get away from that kid, or flag that kid by telling the teacher that the offending party is harassing them. What they don't need is for the teachers to immediately swoop in and grab a kid because the teacher thinks that the kid is harassing them. And if a kid is harassing another kid, and I'm intentionally not putting any genders or names or anything around this, if the kid that is being harassed, bullied, whatever, is not trained well enough, and frankly, yes, the victim has to be trained. The bullying victim needs to have been trained before this point or at this point to report the videos or report the harassment. If they're not willing to do that, then at a certain point, that's it. That's all society can do to help you. There are just people out there that either don't want to help, or are just obstinately going to refuse to take the help. So in the video game world, if everybody knows they can block people, if everybody knows that they can filter out certain words, and they can make their own custom list of words they want filtered out, that's as far as you can go. Like, that's it. Like, if somebody's not going to use the systems and tools given to them, and yet they're going to complain about being bullied after the fact and not report to people being bullied, you can't do anything more. Like, you can't take the playground equivalent here and build a separate playground for every single kid so they can just never possibly be bullied. We can't just turn the whole world into a safe space. So I would rephrase this video and this thought to saying, creating the tools to allow people to report harassment that's where it needs to be, Mike. And as far as social media's failures, I think that's probably some BS too, because name one single social media site where somebody can constantly and horribly harass somebody else. Doesn't exist. The worst case scenario I can even think of would be if you were on Reddit and somebody was a moderator on Reddit harassing you, or somebody, which moderators in Reddits are a whole separate issue. They have too much power and no real accountability. Or they got like a mob to harass you. But if you're talking Twitter, blocking people is easy on Twitter. Super, super easy. People get blocked all the time. There's entire lists of people to block that SJWs in particular love to use to block anybody who has ever even slightly talked to or interacted with anybody that person doesn't like. Facebook is incredibly opt-in. You're literally going to, if you're getting harassed on Facebook, you're literally getting harassed by somebody that's either your friends or family or part of some group you follow that you chose to join. And it's still super easy to block them. Twitter's easy. Yeah, there's no social media site at all that I think of where harassment's a big deal. It really isn't. If you are having trouble being harassed on a social media site, it's because you're putting something out public on Twitter more than anything else. Twitter is the place where you broadcast and put things public, and at a certain point that stops being harassment, and that just becomes people criticizing you, and you being such a wimp that you can't take any criticism at all. But also, it's worth mentioning that harassment, if it is a big issue anywhere, it's not really a big issue in video games. So it is. This is kind of like the strategy that we often see done, where SJWs try to infect and take control of things like comic books. And look at the state of the comic book industry at the moment. It's pretty much dead now because of the pandemic, but also because of years of SJWs pushing ridiculous narratives through comic books. Now there's a decent chance that comic books would have been dead anyways, but they certainly sped along. That we're now seeing lots of people trying to push the same narratives in video games, and if we're not careful, we may end up 10 years down the road having a very dead video game industry, because every game is going to push the same ridiculous arguments that are just not true. And particularly the idea that all video game players are toxic harassers is something that needs to just die as a thought, because it's not true, and even if it is true, there's nothing you can do about it. So it's quite bringing it up. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Shape, which looks like it's a combination of different shape things, but I'm not sure there's a real game here. It's kind of hard to tell whether this is just a collection of little programming, 3D modeling demos, or what. They're calling it a first-person puzzle exploration game. It's $3.19, it's English only. I'll put it on the fall list because there's a chance it might be good, and it doesn't seem like the price is too terrible. Let's go over here and try a default dragon deck instead. Need to hurry up. Next, we have a game on Steam called Journey of a Broken Circle, which seems to be a nicely animated game. It may just be a linear walking game. They're calling it an adventure. I'm not sure that there's really any platforming or enemies you fight in this. It's $7.99, which seems like it's a little bit expensive. So let's see. The name of the developer is Lovable Hat Cult, which is a dangerous name to call your company. So I'll put this on the fall list though, and we'll see if people like it. It could also just be a very short 5-minute experience and nothing there. TechReptile has this article, Lab Rat Coronavirus Algorithms in the State of the Indie Scene, which Lab Rat, I guess, is by Gwyn Frey, who was a Bioshock Infinite developer who went indie. He says he's 33 years old. He started 13 years ago, so he started when he was 20. Let's see. This game Labyrinth looks like it might be fairly decent, like Portal 2 type clone. We'll see what happens. It's coming in early 2021. There is, at a certain level, like, less value in saying that you worked on BioShock Infinite, since probably a lot of people worked on BioShock Infinite, and it's not like that BioShock Infinite was even particularly a beloved BioShock game of the series. I think people were very happy with the first game and sort of happy with the second game and very happy with the DLC for the second game, and then they kind of were mediocre on BioShock Infinite, and I would say the DLC for BioShock Infinite in particular people were not super happy with, or they just didn't care enough to play. Next we have a game on Steam called Cheat or Die. It's a puzzle game. We have to manage a full class of teenagers, help Man Hyde successfully pass her exams by any means possible. So it seems like it's a collection of puzzles in which the student has to cheat, and so it's kind of like a stealth game in the sense that there's this mean teacher following you as you're trying to cheat, although I guess you're the bad guy in this situation because you're cheating instead of studying. $5.39 English only. Now inherently there's a problem here with a teacher grabbing a girl by a shirt, or any student by a shirt, and having a fist up. That's not acceptable at all. Outward displays of aggression is totally not cool at all. Even screaming in someone's face is not acceptable in my book. Or screaming at all is not acceptable. Particularly when you're a teacher, you have to realize that these are kids are all different, and you don't know their mental state or their mental history. So for all you know, you're traumatizing a kid that's already been traumatized way too much. Seems like you might control all the students. When I was in school, I think was a massively large amount of cheating, and it was very much, in my opinion, to the disadvantage of the students who were doing it. At a certain level, I could also argue that there is little value in a lot that was being taught, and
There's a lot more where that came from.
sorry, that argument certainly could be made. But in being unwilling to learn or unable to learn because of the cascading problem of people not being willing or able to try because they've already cheated, it didn't help the demeanor of those people, I think, in their mental state in the long run. And I'm talking about, I remember in first grade, like early when kids don't really even know what they're doing, there was a lot of cheating. I vividly remember a spelling test and looking around and seeing practically everyone around me cheating off of the spelling test, whereas I wasn't having any problem with the spelling test, and frankly I didn't care about what grade I would get on the spelling test anyways. So I don't believe I ever cheated on any assignment at all in school. Not because I was just a super genius or anything like that, just because I didn't care. And it's like I would take a F if I deserved an F, and I'd just be like, well, that was the amount of effort I was willing to put into that, and I would take an A if I earned an A, and then I'd be like, well, I put the same amount of effort for the F as the A, and that was as much as I was willing to do, just because I did not have any real pressure on me. Whereas I feel like a lot of students do get put undue amounts of pressure on them to have high scores and good grades, particularly in elementary, junior high, and high school. Like maybe your senior year in high school, your grades matter. Maybe even your junior and freshman year in high school, your grades matter. But before then, they don't matter at all. And people overemphasize them way too much. And what that inherently does, and I think it is done to a lot of people, is it kills any curiosity in learning or any desire to learn once you're out of school. And what I have found personally is, while I had no interest whatsoever for almost 99% of everything being taught in school when I was in school, I now have a very high interest in learning almost everything that comes across my face, because I am just genuinely curious and like learning new things now, because I'm learning at my own pace, at my own desire. If I don't want to learn about something, I don't have to. If I've learned my fill after 5 minutes, I've learned my fill. And I feel like the testing and the teaching and regurgitation that is the system that is usually used for teaching in schools really kills that curiosity and that desire for lifelong learning, where lifelong learning is way more important, particularly once you start to get very old and the world starts changing around you, and you've got all these new gadgets like Apple iPhones and iPads and things like that. We've all seen baby boomers just more and more get disconnected from reality because they don't know how to use cell phones, and they just can't learn because they just weren't given the curiosity to learn new things, and more they're just falling behind into an ancient way of doing things. You see that a lot in like TV watching. Who watches cable TV these days? Old people that don't know how to use Netflix, and that's pretty much it. Oh, as for the game Cheater Died, we'll put it on the follow list. There's at least a room for an argument for a speech to give that speech again if I played this game. 539 English full audio, doesn't look terrible. This does, I will say, look a little rough. Certainly, it kind of looks like a South Park game, and this looks like this is a cheater kid that's been caught and tied to a pole, and this skeleton looks like this might have been a kid that they skinned alive to make the skeleton. I think there is definitely a danger of just outright abuse being portrayed here in a unfunny manner.
Take that!
Oh, come on!
And so yeah, you'd have to be very careful about that. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article, The Sims 4 Journey to Batu Virtual Galaxy's Edge. So, more Sims Star Wars crossovers happening. I didn't think the Mos Eisley Cantina was on Batu, but I wouldn't really know either.
You're done for.
They make, in my opinion, too much hay around the Mos Eisley Cantina, but because there are definitely some other locations in the original Star Wars movies that do not get referenced anywhere as much as the Mos Eisley Cantina. It's not like they even go back to it several times. Next we have a game on Steam called Gorst. Gorst. G-O-R-S-D. And it seems almost like it is a Zelda-esque adventure, but then it actually looks more like a lines following game, and then they call it a top-down shooter. It does seem like it's just all over the place as far as its gameplay styles. It's $15.29, which is too expensive. It claims to have full audio for every language. Now the visual polish here is good, but then you also have some soundtrack and artwork bundled up together for $26.75. I just don't see a game here. And then this art looks a little too weird, whereas this top-down art doesn't look as interesting as it should. I think this is probably, seeing how English and Chinese is listed next, this is probably a low-effort Chinese game being advertised as a more finished product and trying to be polished up to look like a more finished product. Moving on, TechRaptor has Sony PlayStation 5 event. Makes me wonder what the heck happened. How did it become such a mess? There's a release date. Did we mention the exact release date? Like, you can kind of see TechRaptor, whoever wrote this TechRaptor game,
No more crying.
definitely has a bias. Now, they did announce this Harry Potter world game that I don't believe is really going to be retelling any of the stories of the Harry Potter or Fantastic Beast storyline, and instead it's just going to be its own separate game in that universe, probably in a universe that doesn't even have anything to do with Voldemort. I don't even know if there will be a big bad in it. But then there is a problem in that J.K. Rowling, who really doesn't have any influence here other than she owns Harry Potter and probably still gets a cut, recently under a different pen name, I believe, wrote a new story where there is either a transgender or transvestite killer, and she's already been canceled for being a trans exclusionary radical female is what they're calling her. I don't even know if she is a radical feminist. It's trans exclusionary radical feminist is what TOF stands for. I don't even know if that's what she'd call herself. There is this kind of problem in the general sense that if there's somebody out to cancel you, no matter what you do, that insult and that those accusations will just get brought up again, and at a certain point it is just literally a cancel culture person or group trying to harass you and bully you off of existing, which once again, bullying comes into play, and this time being used by SJWs, which that's inherently the problem with bullying in general, is that you can't ever get rid of it, stop it. And most people who have been bullied at some point in their lives also have been a bully, and it does seem to just happen. So anyways, there's a call to boycott this Harry Potter game. We'll see if there's any real reason for that. I don't think that the PlayStation announcement is anywhere as bad as TechRaptor is making it out to be, but I didn't particularly watch it or pay too much attention to it, and I think that probably is the state that most people should be in, is that they should just not pay a lot of attention to these hype events and these presentations, because they usually don't really matter. The big important facts are the price, which they got the price right, and a release date. I don't even think they mentioned the release date here, but there is a release date of some sort. I will agree that the PlayStation 5 pre-order disaster is something worth mentioning. there. But I wouldn't be surprised if pre-orders go back into sale fairly quickly. And in a weird way, some Nintendo announcements have been made very quickly after that, and it kind of has stolen the thunder of the PlayStation 5 announcement, most recent announcements, because a lot of those games weren't particularly that interesting that they showed off. So you have like Poison Control coming to PS4 and Switch in 2021, which this is a NIS America Japanese game, but apparently it's coming to the entire West, and this game I think has been talked about previously, but now they are now putting out another announcement for this. Looks like a turn-based kind of influenced by Persona style of game. And then Tech Raptor has a different article here. The Prohibition era strategy game Empire of Sin launches December 1st. I think we've heard about this game before, but I guess we now have a launch date. Would there have been a reason that small independent games would have chosen to announce the release of their game right after the PlayStation 4 announcement? Maybe. It could have been that Sony was trying to negotiate exclusivity deals with some of these games, and Sony decided not to give them exclusivity deals, so they just decided to announce the game anyways. That might be the case, or it might just be a coincidence. It's not like there's a lot of time before Black Friday happens. TechRaptor has a review here, an actual review, which we've been seeing very few of those these days, for Doraemon Story of Seasons, which is based off the Japanese kids cartoon anime, and clearly it's going to be a Stardew Valley type farming game. It looks prettier than Stardew Valley, so I guess if you're a kid, the question would really be, is it easier than Stardew Valley? They gave it a 7.5. Doraemon's Story of Seasons is very, very cute anime-style farming simulator that reminds fun and relaxing from beginning to end. Pros are wonderful graphics, cute characters, and a wide array of activities. Cons, the stamina time cycle can be overwhelming and it can be repetitive. So yeah, that does sound like it's probably about as easy as you're going to get for a Harvest Moon Stardew Valley style of game. It's funny that Stardew Valley is getting a lot of credit considering how it really was just a Harvest Moon clone also, but Harvest Moon was just such an old game that there's kind of nothing to do there. I'm not getting any wins here, so I'm just gonna violate the missions and just try to get victories with Portal Craft and forget about one of the missions that I'll just replace later. Gamasutra has that article I was talking about. Sony sees another 3 to 4 years of life in the PlayStation 4. Of course they're going to say that, particularly if they do have fewer numbers to sell for the PlayStation 5.
I bring unto you serenity.
Time for me to prove myself.
Ori and the Will of Wisps is out today on Nintendo Switch, which, okay. I hope not too many kids try to play that game not knowing what it is, because you certainly could accidentally try and buy that for a kid and then the kid quickly find out that it's a fairly challenging platforming game. Having played the deluxe edition in particular of Ori and the Will, nope, No, I played Ori and the Blind Forest. Well, this is actually the sequel. But yeah. After playing the deluxe version of Ori and the Blind Forest, I had no desire to play the non-deluxe version or play the sequel because of just how frustrating the platforming was.
Do you know my master?
Next we have a game on Steam here called Automa Break, which looks like it's a VR tower defense game with first person shooting elements. I can't think though that I would want to play a tower defense game even if it was in VR. $16.99, particularly too expensive for any tower defense game. English full audio. Yeah, this one's I think I can skip. Let's do that. And
Cleansing mode.
what do we want to do? Just smack him in the face, I think. Rune Factory 5 has been delayed to 2021. Rune Factory may look like an anime game, but I think it is just a match 3 puzzle game. Like, well, maybe it's not. Yeah, wow, that looks like a full-on JRPG. Well, that is a deceptive name for a game to call it Rune Factory, but alright. I imagine we will see a decent amount of RPG games and Japanese games in general just delayed. Alright.
Is in my
Let's play that. And
Cleansing
then
mode.
do that.
Oh, come on!
And then attack.
Can you?
TechRaptor has an article here. Disgaea 6 is a Nintendo Switch exclusive, which I feel like it won't be an exclusive forever. And it looks like the little demon character that you play as in Disgaea has changed for Disgaea 6, and kind of feels like all the characters have kind of changed. I have Disgaea 1 and I'm still waiting to get around to it to play it. It's kind of, I think most of Disgaea are location strategic tactical games. Disgaea 5 will temporarily be available to download and play for Nintendo Switch Online members only from September 23rd until September 29th. It might be that the Disgaea series in particular just doesn't want to be heavily animated with like highly real-time polygonal graphics, and so that's why they're focusing at first on they're highly focusing on the let's see, the Switch instead of putting it on other platforms. Of course, on the other hand, it's not like PlayStation 5 or PlayStation at the moment really wants to court any Japanese games. That is something you can definitely tell from the lineup that has been announced and shown, is that I don't think have been any Japanese games that have been highlighted at all, whereas the PlayStation in the past and Sony in the past was the Japanese console for the place to go to play Japanese games. Now they're trying to be the Western console as the place to play Western games, and they have a couple of games like Uncharted and such, and God of War, where that kind of makes sense, but there also is not enough of those games for that to make sense completely. This is a weird crossover. World of Warships is meeting with Transformers. So I guess if you're a fan of Transformers and World of Warships mobile game, you'll be interested about that, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's actually a very small overlap of a fan base there. But who knows? 2 new Monster Hunter games that were announced during the Nintendo Direct. So like the Nintendo Direct kind of did immediately happen after the PlayStation. So we have Monster Hunter Rise and Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruin. I'm not sure either one of those are actually mainstream Monster Hunter games, but that may not really matter. It does certainly go about to just once again re-emphasize the level of fandom in Japan, though, between the Switch and the PlayStation, because it does really feel like we are in a situation where the PlayStation is completely abandoning its home territory of Japan in favor of trying to compete more with Xbox, when Xbox is really not even trying to compete with Sony and instead is just trying to get into streaming services and PC gaming more. So it's kind of like everybody is dancing around here in a circle in a waltz as Switch starts to move towards more hardcore gamers. Sony starts to move towards more Western gamers, and Microsoft starts to move towards more PC gamers.
I could never set foot in the sun.
Let's do that. Alright. Can we win here? Or are we doomed to failure? TechRaptor has an article here. A Souls-like tower defense game called King's Hut is coming to PC and console in 2021. I have no idea what a Souls-like tower defense would even be. I guess it's a tower defense game that is in the dark fantasy theme, kind of like the Souls. It seems like you are playing as a character and then spawning towers. At a certain point, this kind of feels just like you're playing Battleborn with tower defenses. But it's an effort, but at the end of the day, you're still making a tower defense game. And that's still a problem. Let's just play a little Forest Craft and just keep things varied, I suppose. Yeah. They're also comparing it to like a MOBA. And yeah, it may very well be just a MOBA. It's hard to have enthusiasm for that type of game. Any kind of tower defense. Game Sutra has this article, and this is an interesting way to leave the video game industry. The Rayman creator, Michel Ancel, is leaving the game industry to work on a wildlife sanctuary. Now, if I were to vaguely think about it, I think maybe Michel Ancel has done a few controversial things out there. If I recall it, he worked at Ubisoft for the longest time. But let's just assume, since I can't directly remember any controversies around him, that let's just assume there's been exactly zero controversies. He's just lucked out in his career. The thing is, he is supposedly overseeing Beyond Good and Evil 2, which I guess is being retitled now to Beyond Good and Evil, and Peter Jackson's King Kong. Let's just assume that King Kong has been cancelled in the first hand. Now, let's quickly assume that Beyond Good and Evil 2 has not been really canceled directly, but is obviously never going to come out. Now would be a great time to say I'm just leaving the game industry to run a wildlife sanctuary. It's a great way to get out of Ubisoft with all the controversies around Ubisoft. It's a great way to get out from under of Beyond Good and Evil 2. Now, very few people are going to remember that he was involved or blame him when Beyond Good and Evil 2 turns out to be terrible, which there's a high chance it will. It's really a great way to get out of this. So many other people who worked at Ubisoft recently have been fired because of other complaints. Now, this also might this also might be the beginning of a Ubisoft 2.0 where we see Michel Ancel and several other former Ubisoft employees moving to a new company and out from under the control of the main people in charge, or maybe the main people who were in charge of Ubisoft moving to a new company out from under the conflict of employees making a lot of complaints and HR complaints, although it does seem like all the HR complaints, or most of them, were valid. One way or the other, we're going to see something that is going to be easily described as a Ubisoft 2.0, if not multiple Ubisoft 2.0 type companies that get developed.
You're done for.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we see in less than 2 years Michel Ancel get back to making games. And of course he's going to give you the boilerplate response to say the teams have been autonomous and the projects are going super well as far as Wild and Beyond Good and Evil 2. I guess maybe Peter Jackson's King Kong and Beyond Good and Evil 1 were games that he worked on. Honestly, besides Beyond Good and Evil, which is easily a fluke or just a middle ground game. I mean, it wasn't the greatest game. It was just a lot of people are like really obsessed and in love with it. It's like, yeah, that he really doesn't have the biggest lineup of good games to talk about, considering he's been working in the game industry for 30 years. To potentially have only 2 games worth mentioning is pretty bad. Like, if you assume a 4-year cycle on a game, 30 years, you would be, let's see, 4, 8, 16. Yeah, you should be somewhere around 3, 4, 5 games that you directly worked on. Okay.
It won't be long now.
And yeah, Raymond, I guess, is the 3rd game. But yeah, Real isn't as stellar of a career as you'd like. TechRaptor has an article here. We talked about this before. Rocket League on Steam now requires an Epic Games account. I feel like this will be irritating to a lot of people, and we haven't heard any news of it getting review bombed yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does get review bombed, and if it does, I wouldn't be surprised if Steam decides to not flag it as a review bomb, since that would be something definitely affects your experience. Your first launch experience of a game is, I own Rocket League, but I don't think I've ever actually launched it. So if it requires me to put in and make a third-party account, that's annoying. And that's not what people want.
I have lost.
Interesting concession there. They must have ran out of time. Well, they just wanted to prove that they could win. I need victories, so I'll just keep on playing. Here we have a game on Steam called K00 the Cannibal Boy. This looks like a horror visual novel. The animation doesn't look as great as it could be. It's tagged as a visual novel, psychedelic horror. It's $2.43. It's English, Chinese, and Japanese. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a Chinese game. And then you have another game called Loser Reborn. And then here we have one called Physical Exorcism K01. So I bet what this is a prequel. It's a half-hour visual novel based on a true story written by a writer with a background in psychology. It is a psychological horror story with the urban legend themes. I don't know if I believe any of that. Let's look at this other game and see if this is reviewed. Mostly positive. Okay. This one's tagged LGBTQ+. And it looks kind of like an RPG Maker game. I could see why I would have immediately dismissed this. It's $1.49. Alright, well, let's look at this other game then. Positive. RPG Maker game. It looks even more RPG Maker. Interesting that they went from RPG Maker to visual novel. But on the other hand, this is kind of an irrelevant game. It would be really hard to justify playing this. It's 3 achievements for 30 minutes. That's kind of makes it feel like an achievement game also. I don't believe any of this. The person really has psychology background, or what that really even means. A background in psychology may be that you sat in one class and made a D or failed it even. Yeah, I think if I'm gonna do horror visual novel games, I'm gonna do the big AAA ones, so I'm just gonna skip that. There's no reason to put it on the fall list. I need to be more critical. Let's see, we have a Gematsu article here. Jet the Far Shore has been delayed to 2021. I don't even recall this game, which, like, once again, that is just a constant problem where people announce these so many games that it doesn't matter. You can't really remember them when they get delayed. Well, I can't remember them. Gematsu has an article, Yokai Watch Jam, Yokai Academy Y, YY Gakuen Sekatsu. First major free update has a TV commercial. I mispronounced, I imagine, a lot of that. But yeah. I'm not sure these are the same characters from the Yokai Watch anime. They may have moved over to a new generation. And Yokai Watch still not a super successful show outside of Japan, but definitely popular in Japan. TechRaptor has an article here. The fan-made Pokemon Silver intro is crisp and cool. So, yeah, there's a fan-made Pokemon Silver. I feel like there was a game called Gold and Silver, but maybe not. Maybe there was just a gold version. And I'm not sure what they really are offering in this fan-made challenge game. it's probably just more of the same, which is pretty much all anybody I think wants. It's just more of the same.
You're done for. You won't get away with stop.
Gotta reload.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Crisis Wing, which is a shoot 'em up. Nothing special about it. Other than that, it's $7.99 English. It's a little too expensive, I think, for a shoot 'em up, even though they are kind of a niche game, and I'm not really sure what the right price really would be for that. Let's see. I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna do this. Then I'm gonna do one of these,
Let's play.
and then I'm gonna attack it.
It won't be long now. This is the only
That
one.
was probably a waste. I should have probably evolved that. Next, we have a game on Steam called Zibs Alien Survival, which seems like it's an asset flip game trying to be a kind of like similar game to Kill All Humans, which that game was recently released. There probably should be a few more games where you play as an alien, like a little green man, little gray man, whatever, but you can't just asset flip it. Early access for $7.19, English, Russian, Ukrainian. Yeah, it's a low effort Russian game. 5 damage there. And then do that. Can't evolve this guy, can I? Darn it. I needed to evolve him, or I would have liked to evolve him. And I needed to play more cards. Tech Raptor has a review here. Remothered Broken Porcelain is blood curdling, so yeah, it looked like it was a nicely animated horror game, which that does lead to a good chance of it being good. They don't seem to have an actual review for it, though, so this really is just an advertisement. But there are some new screenshots, and particularly for a darker, more horror-centered game, having more screenshots, I think, is something that's going to be helpful. Okay. 1, 2, and then do this, and then that, then end the turn. Suppose it is worth mentioning, this is like some of the last images we've even seen from Beyond Good and Evil 2, and that was from like 2 years ago. And it's worth once again mentioning that the main character of Beyond the Good and Evil 1 is now the skin, basically, of the bad character in Beyond Good and Evil 2, because it's a universe of clones, which I think basically just lets them explain that while you may see the same characters, they really won't be the same characters. Which, that's not going to satisfy anybody.
This is grave.
But yeah, people have definitely not been happy with what they've been shown of Beyond Good and Evil 2, of which there's actually little that's been shown. Yeah, we need one more victory, and I think I'm just going to have to re-roll this, because that's not something I think I'm going to be able to get. Here's Tech Raptor's article. The Nintendo 3DS has been officially discontinued. Does that include the 2DS and the new 3DS XL? Yeah, it does. Wow. The 2DS and 2DS XL. So now they are only focusing on the
I
Switch.
guess you're looking for a fight.
I guess we kind of knew that was going to happen, but I'm a little surprised that the new 2DS XL and the new 3DS are also being stopped in production. But yeah, there really wasn't any reason for them to continue with production of the 3DS or 2DS, considering how the Switch can just do it better in every way. And it does inherently go to show that they've abandoned that 3D technology experiment, but that was fairly obvious. That was abandoned a long time ago, once it started causing motion sickness and potential seizures. Although I don't know if that was ever proved that it actually did cause seizures. It just felt like parents were afraid of that. We have another Jigsaw puzzle game on Steam, 1001 Jigsaw World Tour, which one assumes would be 1001 Jigsaw puzzles, although they seem to be fairly small ones, and they seem to be all Asian stock images for $2.99. Bunch of languages, but oddly none of them being English. Being Asian languages. It's just English, French, German, and Russian, which, if I were to venture a guess, that would probably mean it's a Russian low-effort game, designed just to launder money more than anything else. Next we have Fill and Cross World Contest, which is just standard, what are these called? Pictograms? Yeah. Pictograms for $2.99. English, German, Russian again. Yep. It definitely seems like we're seeing quite a lot of Russian language support. For these low effort games. Next we have Fill and Cross Royal Riddles, probably from the same developer or publisher, and yet the game looks completely different. $2.99, again, English, German, Russian. See, next we have a game that's in Asian letters and called Beelzebub, which says it's a turn-based tactics game. To me it looks like it's a Chinese RPG Famicom NES style game. It looks very, very rough and bad. English is not supported, $6.99, Chinese only. Yep, we still are seeing a decent amount of really low quality Chinese games getting put on Steam. Alright, we'll do this. And then this. Next we have a game that's just Asian characters, and it looks like it's a horror asset flip game. And it has a weird like chroma misalignment effect on it that makes the graphics look weird. English is not supported, 99 cents. Japanese, oops, I was wrong about that one. Not a low effort Chinese horror game, it's a low effort Japanese horror game. Yeah, I'm kind of glad every time I see a low effort Japanese any kind of game, because it does kind of balance it out a little bit. Although in all fairness, we should see more games from just like Korea and Thailand and the Philippines and India in general. Just there's plenty of other Asian countries out there that are not in the market at all for a to publish video games at all. Next we have a game called Death Drives a Bus, which seems like it's a top-down kind of puzzle game of some sort. I don't like the visuals though. It's It's just a little too much black and white with spots of colors to just highlight how much black is actually on the screen. There's a lot of negative space in these images. 99 cents, English, 8 achievements. Yeah, I just don't think I could keep my eyes on this screen. It's visually distracting with all that negative space. Next we have a game called Surviving HE Double Hockey Sticks. Well, I don't know why I censor myself saying hell, but you know, YouTube and all BS. Yeah, this just looks like an asset flip survival horror game. $9.34, English only, nothing special there. Alright, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this.
This bears further study.
We're almost done for today. Kind of right on time, but it is getting just more and more difficult even to do 2 hours and 45 minutes on the stream, just sitting in a chair alone. Here we have a game called Crisis Arcana. It looks like MS Paint graphics as a top-down gauntlet style, maybe roguelite game. $6.99 English full audio. Allegedly, totally not worth $6.99. Obviously. Okay. I'll hope this is right. Well, you know what? I could have probably avoided killing that guy.
Whoa, bud, cut the rough stuff.
Next we have a game on Steam here called Tamiku. It looks like it's a Bubble Bobble clone. I don't know if anybody wants a Bubble Bobble clone. It may just be an emulator running an old Japanese NES game that I just don't recognize. But yeah, I don't see anything here that particularly sells me on such an old looking game that seems like it has no relevance. Seems like it might be a combination of a couple of old NES games. It's $5.99, bunch of language supported. Just don't see it. Do see Rogue Legacy over here. I just want to double check this is on the follow list. Yes, it is. Alright. Can I do anything to save the day here? You hit that. Play that.
Let's play.
You hit that. You play that.
Hey, let's play.
You play that.
Hey, let's play.
Play that.
Hey, let's play.
You evolve here.
You're done for. I'm so sparkly. Yeah.
Which I played wrong. I could have done 2 damage to that instead. See, next we have a game on Steam called Dark Air, which looks like a fly around inside of a maze asset flip game. I bet that's exactly what this is they asset flipped the maze generator Unity asset and merged it with a fly around space pre-made asset. Well, this is definitely not something I'd ever want to do. I wouldn't want to race while flying in walls where you could crash and blow up very easily, nor would I want to be in a place where you're having to fly in such narrow circumstances. this is $5.39, English only. Well, I think what I want to do here is I could probably struggle to get one more victory, and I probably should. But then that may go long, so I'm gonna risk it here. I'm gonna hop in here, do one more game as we're wrapping up, and we may go long, and oh well if we do, I suppose. But if we get a quick disconnect, then we'll be going right on time. Let's see, we have a game on Steam here called Osman Ghazi, which seems to be an asset flip game.
This curse is my
It's an interesting thought to try to have a character that kind of looks like a Prince of Persia type character and focus your game as that main character, and then giving him some abilities. They've done something weird here where they have bubbles coming out from behind him, so it looks like he's tooting out bubbles. But yeah, you can definitely see that looking at the trailer that there just is not an actual game here for that main character. And in all seriousness, there, like, had The Witcher not been called The Witcher, instead been called Geralt of Rivia, it might have sold a little bit less than it did, because Geralt of Rivia, particularly in the first couple of games, not a particularly interesting or appealing character, and even in the third game he's not a particularly appealing character on his own. He needs a lot of assistance from the secondary characters of like Dandelion and the many female love interests. And inherently in this game, Osman Ghazi, which I assume is his name, you're not seeing any secondary characters or any people that he's interacting with at all. So this claims a bunch of languages. I wonder if perhaps this is the name of an actual person from like the Ottoman Empire, maybe. Could it's fine by me if it is, but you kind of need to do a little bit more work there to have a game. You can't just have what might be some weird Middle Eastern historical propaganda thing come out just to try to educate people on some history. There's kind of an inherent problem with the Middle East and its history in general, in the sense that whoever comes into power very often tries to erase the histories of the past. So it's a land that's effectively just erasing its own history over and over again. So yeah, that's problematic, certainly. Moving on, we have a game called A Shopping Trip to Elkland Tour, which this is kind of the opposite situation, where it is a game based around a location. And there definitely looks like there are people that you interact with and more visual polish. It doesn't just look like an asset flip game. Now this is tagged as a hidden object VR game, so it requires VR. It's $2.99, which is very cheap for a VR game, and it's English only. This might be something you might be interested in, but also it does kind of seem like if it's just a hidden object game, it at best is going to be one of the few interesting hidden object games for VR that are out there, and that's pretty much all you're going to be able to say about it.
Hey, let's play. It won't be long now. I'm so sparkly. Yeah.
Hit that,
Stay aware.
that, that, and that. Gamatsu has an article here. Captain Tsubasa, Rise of New Champion, shipments and digital sales top 500,000. This is the soccer game. Quite few announcements really from Gamatsu today. I wonder if that's just things are slowing down in Japan, or perhaps the pandemic is slowing things down too. Here we have a game on Steam called Rainy, which looks like a black and white Asian game where you might just walk for 5 minutes, and that might be the only experience. English is not supported. It's free to play, so I guess the price is right. It's Japanese only. I bet this is probably just a 5-minute linear story experience, though. It doesn't look bad, but also I wouldn't pay any money for it, so they definitely determined the right price there.
This ends here.
I walk my own path. Just don't.
Hit that. And then hit that. And then hit that. And that. And that.
Let's play.
And that. I should have played that instead, but whatever. I'm still gonna win. Next we have a game on Steam here called Popping Donuts, which looks to me like it's some kind of platforming game. It looks nicely polished. It looks like it might be a mobile game originally. Looks very designed to promote a sugar high. It's free to play, Japanese only. You don't get a lot of Japanese free-to-play games, so it's kind of nice to see that. This does seem like it is probably a mobile game that was a simplistic, like, platforming game. It seems like you use different types of suites as platformers, so you must not be able to jump very high. Interesting. Alright, well, it's that. Evolve there. And then go 1, 2, 3. That took a lot of clicks for that to end the turn. Next we have a game called Escape from Tartarus, which looks like it is just a low effort Tetris clone. Yeah, I don't see anything here of interest. It's free to play, so I guess the price is right though. But yeah, I don't need to seek out Tetris clones. I'll just play in one of the many official Tetris games. There we go, we'll take the win. Next we have a game on Steam called Zombie Rush Heroes, which looks like a tower defense game where you're trying to barricade against zombies. It probably is a free-to-play game with microtransactions, and it's a tower defense game inherently anyway, so it's $2.34 with no microtransactions. I'm a little surprised by that. But yeah, at the core of it, it is just a tower defense game, so I'm going to say no to that. So we got the one thing, which was win 7 matches. And so what I'll probably do is just replace this, because I can't really see myself in the next couple days actually spending the extra effort to try to get that victory. On Monday we will start, I think, to have to do some of the Open 6 things with... No, we've got enough for next Monday to use the tickets, but next Monday if we don't get another 2 tickets over the course of the next week, we'll have to start using gold to do Open 6s. And it might not be a terrible time to kind of not do that and maybe do a Take 2 instead. That way we can wait for the new expansion, which The new expansion could be in a couple days. It could be a week from now, a month from now, but I don't think it's going to be much more than a month from now. We just have a few more tabs to talk about, and then we'll be done for the day. So here we have Fruit Clicker, which this is a awful looking game. It's been a while since we've just seen a completely terrible low effort game. Looks like it was all done in MS Paint. Early access for $1.39, English only. But yeah, we still get those. And you would think if there was any actual curation, somebody would tell them, no, don't sell this game on Steam. Next we have a top-down game called Carrot Heart, which looks like a top-down twin-stick shooter, action roguelike game. Maybe not so much shooter. I don't know if the idea of playing as a bunny and having bunny-themed elements helps a game. I don't know if that really helps something like Jazz Jackrabbit in the old days, or if it hurt. This is early access for $9.99, English and Russian. I'm going to put it on the follow list, but it's a decent chance that this is going to be mediocre at best. Apparently, that one doesn't want to load. That one. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Unity has been valued at $13.7 billion following its $1.3 billion initial public offering. So, I guess the general idea, what you take from that is they had an IPO that was for 10% of the company, and they made $1.37 billion for that 10%. Thus, they're valuing the entire company at $13.7 billion. That doesn't inherently mean anything really, but okay. I think Unity is not going away as a failure anytime soon. So, yeah, we'll move forward knowing that information, although it doesn't really mean anything. Not unless you're investing in Unity. Here we have a game on Steam called Detective March Forward, The Missing Will, which seems to be an adventure puzzle game. Seems to be fairly simplistic. This almost feels like a kid's game. They're calling it a point and click. I don't know if I'd really call it that, but alright. It's $9.99, English full audio. I'll put it on the follow list, but this might be just a little too simplistic a game, too kid-friendly. Point and click adventures in particular are not the types of games I would expect to be point and click or kid-friendly games. Yeah, I wouldn't expect point and click games to be kid-friendly games usually. Even the kid-friendly point and clicks out there like Freddy Fish and such weren't really that kid-friendly. Here we have a game called Pummel Paladins, which looks like it's just a player versus player with a lot of dangerous rooms. It's free to play, so I guess you can't complain too much of it being nothing, but it's just shared split screen player versus player, English only, so you can't even play it online. That doesn't feel like a game that would particularly get a lot of play. So then that brings me to the Humble Bundle store, which I doubt there's any new Humble Bundles. What's going on here? Let's see. Apparently there's a bundle here where you can pet the dog. So if you pay $1, you get Scribblenauts Unlimited, Beyond Eyes. You do not pet a dog, I think, in Beyond Eyes. In fact, in Beyond Eyes, since I recently played that, the only dog that I saw was a dog that would bark at you and scare you. So that's B. BS. You pet a cat at the very beginning. Bold Boy and Dog Sled Saga. If you pay more than the average, for $4.75 you get Shenmue 1 and 2, which maybe that's a good deal, maybe that's a bad deal, because that might not be all the DLC on that. And then Where the Water Tastes Like Wine, and then Death's Gambit. If you pay $12 or more, you get Blair Witch. Which, do you pet a dog in Blair Witch? That would be weird. So, that seems like that's a lot of some BS as far as that bundle is being labeled as games that you can pet the dog, but and yeah, I don't think that Beyond Eyes is particularly a good game, so I can't really recommend that bundle either. More and more, that is what it's coming down to. Is just, I'm seeing a lot of stuff. Susan Wojcicki, the CEO, just tweeted a minute ago that Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, thank you for your legacy. Your inspiration inspired generations of women, including myself, my sisters, and daughters. Thank you for leading the way and showing all of us that we can work together to uphold justice. And she's getting a bunch of retweets. So I'm wondering if Ruth Bader Ginsburg just died. She was very old and in the hospital for a long time. She may have just retired. Let's see. We'll talk about it on Monday, but the Sega Atlas has announced their Tokyo Game Show 2020 lineup. I guess the Tokyo Game Show lineup for PlayStation in particular might be the place to see if there actually is any Japanese games for the PlayStation 5. Here we have Ryan Watt, the guy in charge of YouTube gaming. He says, "Rest in peace, Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg." So it does seem like she died. Alright. And certainly all the politicians and politic following people will have a heyday with that, as it has been a stated goal of a Republican allied group to cram as many possible judges into positions of power as possible. Like nearly 1/3 of all the current appeals court judges, I believe, in the United States have been put into place in the Trump presidency. Let's see. But I'm talking about video games, so apparently there was a delay on emails from the Epic Games Store. I didn't even see that one. But it does seem like the Epic Games Store is constantly having problems. And yeah, it doesn't seem like there's anything else to talk about, so that's gonna be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist or a gift card.